Hello, Duke fans, and welcome to episode 494 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. Gentlemen, it is official. Jon Scheyer has gone undefeated at home in his first season as the Duke men's basketball coach. Let's give it up for a second for Jon Scheyer. Congratulations, coach.
Woo-hoo, let's do it.
For not losing a game in Cameron this year. That is a pretty cool accomplishment. Let's talk about it. I am your host for this episode. I'm Sam Klein. I'm joined by Jason Evans and Donald Wine. Jason is the one who was not at the game tonight, so I'm going to ask him first. Jason, how are you this evening?
I had a delightful evening watching the Blue Devils with a win that we got a little nervous at the end, maybe, but it was a game that they were largely in control of throughout. It was a really, really nice win against a good team that was playing well.
And Donald Wine was in the building from senior night. So, Donald, maybe before we get into sort of the details of the game, can you tell us about what was going on in Cameron today? They had tweeted before the game that they were going to be doing, it seemed like they were going to be doing senior honors for Max Johns, Cale Catchings, and Jacob Grandison. So what was that like tonight?
Honestly, they actually didn't do anything for those three, at least during the game or after the game. It was still like they honored all the seniors of the cheerleaders, the band, the Duke Dancing Devils, the Duke managers. There's so many, obviously, I know we all know this and some fans out there know this, but there's a lot of people who make a Duke basketball game go, right? Who are part of this experience just as much as the staff and the players. And so they did a great job at highlighting those people who were seniors and doing their final game. It was a funny thing. They did some of the cheerleaders during the first TV timeout, and the Duke Blue Devil was supposed to hand them flowers. But the Duke Blue Devil, as some people on this podcast might know, the head doesn't always match up with the eyes. So he fumbled the tradition. He fumbled the flowers and then stepped on them before he was able to hand them to the cheerleaders. They took it in stride. But at the next TV timeout, they did the Dancing Devils, and the Dancing Devils who weren't seniors, they said, "Yo, Blue Devil, we got this. You take a break. We'll hand these flowers to the Dancing Devils who were the seniors." But it was a great night. Everyone was loud in Cameron. It was full. There was some red in the building, but I think everyone there saw what was a physical game, and I'm ready to talk about the physicality. I don't think we saw freshmen tonight. I think we saw juniors tonight.
By the way, related to that senior night thing, the reason Sam thought they were honoring Max Johns, Cale Catchings, and Jacob Grandison was because Duke men's basketball sent out a photo of those three guys together and said, "Hey, big game tonight." And clearly
that was the ad, or I guess the media ad that they
right.
put on social media for the game. Yeah.
Right. And to some extent, the most significant thing about that is that they did not include Ryan Young in that. Ryan Young has another year of eligibility, but he could absolutely decide, I've played 4 years of college basketball at this point. Actually, it's 5 years because he redshirted as a freshman at Northwestern, and he could have easily, decided this is my last season. The fact that he wasn't pictured in that has a lot of people thinking that Ryan Young is sort of signaling to the Duke basketball program that he plans to play another year, and I can't imagine he would go someplace else. I can't imagine he's not pleased with how his season has gone so far at Duke and the NIL opportunities and such that he's gotten. So even before the game, a little bit of good news in that if there was any speculation, I think Ryan Young kind of put it to bed, at least in my mind.
I didn't have any speculation. I knew he was staying.
And it's not like there is a big man that is, or there are big men who are obviously supplanting Ryan Young in the rotation next year. If anything, it probably gets easier with the fact that Kyle Filipowski had such a good season that he probably is leaving after this season, which was not necessarily the plan headed into the year. And then, Jason, when we were talking about it earlier, I then leapt to the next question as a alumnus of the business school where Ryan Young and all of the other graduate students are students in the 1 year program. My next thought was, well, what's Ryan Young going to be studying next year? Because he's in a 1 year program that cannot be extended to 2. So
anything
they're going to have to find.
Wants.
They're going to have to find new courses of study for him. So
independent study.
I'm sure they'll have no trouble finding something that Ryan finds interesting that he can spend a year working on at Duke. I don't think there have been some people I think out there who've sort of said, "Oh, I wonder if he's going to do an MBA, move from the 1-year program to the 2-year MBA." I think that's highly unlikely. It's a whole different. Sam, as you know, look, I'm talking about it. Sam actually has a Duke MBA, so the notion of doing that while playing basketball, I think, is kind of bonkers.
Good luck to him, whatever the decision is. But guys, let's talk about the game. So the final score, 71-67. Duke beats NC State, avenging the pretty lopsided loss that Duke suffered at PNC almost 2 months ago. It was a 4-point game at halftime. It was a 4-point game at the end of the game. And before we get into this, I need to just issue the full disclosure that I watched the first half of the game. I did the thing that I've been doing for Tuesday night games all of this season, which is that there's a bar pretty close to my apartment where there's live bluegrass music and bluegrass jams on Tuesday nights. And I've been, when Duke has been playing at 7:00, I've watched the first half at home and then gone to the bar to watch the second half of the game and play music. I did that tonight. I got to the bar and they didn't have the TVs on. So I missed the second half of the game. And then I was reminded that we were recording tonight. So I am operating off of having watched one half of this game and looking at the box score. Jason watched the whole thing from his couch. Donald was in the building. So everyone's got a different level of understanding, but I think I can piece together enough of what happened here. So as I said, the final score, 71-67. Jason, I know you took a look at some of the headlines that we got from the listeners, and folks, sorry that sometimes we record these right after the game and sometimes the next day. So I'm sure some more headlines will trickle in, but we got a good number of them immediately following the game. So Jason, what are the headlines from this one?
Yeah, I got there are 5 of them that I like, and we've gotten already well over a dozen headlines from the listeners out there. So you folks are on the ball, even though we're recording very shortly after the game ended. Mark Esselstein has "the captain takes over, Devils out tough the pack," and there were plenty of headlines where people talk about Jeremy Roach having a huge game. When it comes time for us to talk about the good, Sam, if you toss to me first, I'll be talking extensively about Jeremy Roach. So rest assured. Josh Dilley had "Oh Jeremy, my captain, Roach revels in captain in Cameron finale." I would adjust that. I think it should just be "Oh captain, my captain," Josh. So fix that next time, buddy. Chris Bynum came in with sweet 16-0. Duke holds off Wolfpack to finish unbeaten at home. We had several headlines from people who pointed out, as we did at the start of this broadcast, that John Shire and the Duke Blue Devils go undefeated this year in their home games. Courtney Kruger had one. Duke packs another win into an undefeated home season. I like that one. I think that's really, really good. And those were all the headlines that I really enjoyed from this one. And like Sam said, there's still more coming in, but these are the folks who got it to us early. Sometimes early bird catches the worm.
Guys, I actually do have my own headline from this game. And
I love it. My
headline is, "Perfection isn't always perfect, but it can be physical." And I'll leave it at that. I think, the fact that we went 16-0, it wasn't a perfect game, but it definitely, like I said, I got to marvel at how physical this game was inside and out. But it wasn't the best game that Duke played all year, but it leaves them 16-0 with a perfect home record. And I think that's the most important thing.
Jason, I'm surprised you didn't enjoy the submission from John Wiener, which was Devils forget how to play basketball when up double digits. To your point about how it felt like Duke was going to win this game the whole time.
Wait. The headline from this game cannot be that we failed to hold on to a double-digit lead, because in the end, we did hold on to that lead, and there's too much good that happened in this game to focus on blowing a lead.
I agree. So Jason, why don't you tell me about Jeremy Roach? Because on a night when Roach goes 0 for 5 from 3, he still makes a huge impact. It felt like, at least from the part of the game that I was able to watch, that Jeremy Roach continues to do that thing where he looks around in a moment of panic and says, "I'm going to take the ball to the hoop and I'm going to get a layup." So
Sam, that's called him saying, "I'm him," because Jeremy Roach was him tonight.
I got this. So Jason, tell me about Jeremy Roach's evening, going 9 for 14 from 2-point land at least, and making a lot of big buckets for Duke.
I think that every single one of those 9 baskets was with the shot clock under 5 seconds. It was unbelievable. Duke's best offense, by the way, in the first half was wait until the shot clock's down to like 2 or 1, and then have Jeremy Roach shoot a layup. And, we should be clear. Almost all these layups were very contested. There were frequently 2 or 3 NC State guys around him. Jeremy Roach is so adept at finding unique angles for his layups, at stretching his arms in ways that you wouldn't expect from a small guy like him to be able to do it. And his finishing around the rim was just incredibly impressive in this game again and again. And the big thing to me was, as I sort of looked back on the game, there were all these moments in the game where I was like, okay, this is getting to be a big moment. We need to stretch this out a little bit. State's coming back a little bit. We've been scoreless for a little bit. This is a big moment. Every one of those big moments, except one, and I'm going to talk about that one in a little bit, but every single one of those big moments ended up with Jeremy Roach making a play for Duke, usually making a layup or a short runner in the lane. And like you said, on a night where he couldn't buy a shot outside of 15 feet, he drained everything he took around the basket. And NC State just didn't have an answer. And the really interesting thing about it, the announcers pointed this out on the broadcast a couple times. DJ Burns, who's a hugely important player for NC State and a great offensive player, and who hit some shots that I don't know how the heck he even got them close to the basket, let alone put them in. DJ Burns was a big problem for NC State on defense because Jeremy Roach doing some pick and roll, and DJ Burns just couldn't hedge and cover Jeremy Roach. He couldn't, cover him one-on-one. Every time Duke put DJ Burns into a pick and roll, it was a problem for NC State. And we talk a lot about John Shire's coaching. We talk a lot about the smarts of the guys in this team. I think Jeremy Roach recognized that, and he knew anytime I need to, I can get to the rim against this guy. And that was a big development in this game.
Yeah, Jeremy Roach was in the first half, he was incredible. Jason, you mentioned that a lot of his shots his layups at the rim were contested. It didn't feel like it, because that's how good he was at getting to the rim and making it and creating space as he's going up with the shot. It felt like, there's times where you can kind of hold off your defender with your off arm while you lay it in with your other one, but it felt like he created the space in the air on his own. It was in a game that was super physical. It felt like everything kind of parted for him at the right moments. And I think, Jason, the best part was his calmness in doing it. Like you said, he kind of looked around and said, "Don't worry, guys, I got this," and just went to the rim and got it done. And I think that was in a game where a lot of guys were physical and doing great things. Jeremy Roach was just kind of the calm that kept it all together. Whenever things kind of got haywire, he was the guy that kind of brought it back with a good play. And it wasn't just him making baskets. It was also him making the right decisions on offense and defense.
Guys, we talked before this game about how Duke needed to dramatically cut down on the turnovers against NC State, given that in the first game, Duke turned the ball over, I think, over 20 times. So tonight, Duke turns the ball over 10 times, which is not a great number, but given some of the performances of this team this season, Duke only turning the ball over 10 times against a State team that loves turning other teams over, whether that's through steals or through drawing offensive fouls, tipping balls out of bounds, etc. That is a great outcome. And you have to give credit to Roach, who we already talked about, but also to Proctor and Filipowski. They both turned the ball over a couple of times, but in an environment where it can get a lot more hectic against NC State, against guys like Burns and Terquavion Smith and Jarkel Joyner, Duke didn't succumb to that. And it felt like, if a couple more balls get tipped out, then NC State could have completed this comeback.
The thing about Proctor that impressed me in this game was that NC State, I don't think we've seen its team pick Duke up full court like that the entire game, the way NC State did in this contest. They were clearly trying to speed Duke up to make us play faster than we wanted to. And Tyrese Proctor, and to a lesser extent Jeremy Roach, but it was mostly Proctor, just stayed under control the whole time. Like, Duke didn't want to take a lot of shots with 20 plus seconds left in the shot clock. So Tyrese Proctor was like, look, I'm going to beat this press, and then we're going to slow it down, and we're going to run our offense the way we're supposed to run our offense, and things will be fine. It was a very mature performance by Tyrese Proctor. And then the other thing about him was, oh man, his defense on Terquavion Smith. Terquavion Smith is the third leading scorer in the ACC. He's almost certainly going to be a first-team All-ACC player. He is likely to be a first-round draft pick at the end of this year. Terquavion Smith was just destroyed by Tyrese Proctor. He only gets 2 buckets in this game. He didn't really score at all. He didn't score at all in the first half. He didn't get his first bucket, his first field goal, until 1:36 left in the game. 1:36 left, basically for 38 and a half minutes. Tyrese Proctor held Terquavion Smith to 0 baskets. Dude's averaging like 17 or 18 points per game. That's truly impressive defense. We've seen Proctor doing this again and again. I feel like I'm a broken record talking about Tyrese Proctor's defense, but man, he put on a heck of a show against Terquavion Smith.
And on top of the great defense, both on ball and off ball, he also frustrated Smith to the point where Proctor drew a technical foul during like before and out of bounds. And Donald, I know you told us that you didn't have a great vantage point to see the shove or the lack thereof. I don't know, Jason, if you had a different opinion. I think that Proctor got away with one there, and I'm not sure exactly how much. There was definitely contact. I don't know if that contact caused him to go to ground, but
so here's what I think happened. So Proctor and Smith were sort of pushing a little bit, and Proctor was getting too close to Smith, and Smith kept on pushing him away and pushing him away. And at one of those points when he pushed him away, Proctor didn't know that DJ Burns was behind him, and he sort of fell down and tripped over DJ Burns. And I don't think Proctor was looking to draw a technical there or anything like that. But when he went to the ground, the officials had to do something at that point.
I will say on the replay, I was on that side of the court, but basically Proctor was kind of falling back with his back to me. It didn't look like he clipped anything with DJ Burns. It just looked like that there was a bunch of physical things going on, and Proctor tried to make something happen. It was not a flop. It was embellishment, because the definition of a flop is you're not touched, and he was actually touched. But I do think it was kind of a back and forth. And you're right, DJ Burns was in the area. I just couldn't see whether that was what caused the fall or if it was just Proctor just trying to make something happen.
Well, and Burns has 100 pounds on Proctor, so
at least
Proctor is knocked into him.
I bet it's more than 100.
He's 280.
He's a hard guy to move out of the way. But you know what? All of that being said, Proctor drew that foul, got right back up, and was like, "All right, great. Like, let's keep playing." Totally not fazed by the fact that Smith was getting up in Proctor's business, reacting to Proctor's incredible defense. Donald, in addition to the defensive effort that Duke put on the perimeter, I feel like we need to highlight the play of the big men down low. And 2 things stand out to me here. One is that Kyle Filipowski gets back to his double ways in a big way. He's got 14 rebounds in this game, including 5 offensive. Dereck Lively adds his own 12 rebounds, including 6 offensive. And together, we told you before the game that DJ Burns was going to be a big deal. He was great against Duke in the first game. He's only 6 for 15 in this game, which is a pretty bad shooting night for Burns.
And it felt like most of them were early, like down the stretch, like the final 10 minutes. I don't think he hit a bucket.
Yeah, because I told you I only watched the first half, and I think he may have had close to 10 points at half, if he didn't have 10 points already at halftime. And the thing that I noticed there, and Donald, I want to get your opinion on this from the stadium, is that Duke was being much more creative on defense, selectively doubling DJ Burns, because if he was getting Dereck Lively by himself a little bit farther from the basket, or if he was drawing Ryan Young, Burns was eating those guys up. But Kyle Filipowski was doing a lot of selective double teaming, getting into Burns at the right moments to prevent Burns from getting into a rhythm in the post.
Yeah, absolutely. And I liked the fact that John Shire and the coaching staff had a game plan where, again, they were going to throw, like you said, throw different sets at him, throw different looks at him to try and challenge DJ Burns to once again beat us, right? The last game, we talked about it was more of a coming out party for DJ Burns. Now they were ready for him. And the one thing I want to say about Kyle Filipowski and Dereck Lively together, like you said, they combined for 26 rebounds. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when you have 2 guys who understand, finally it clicks to them that, if I want the ball and it's in the air, I can go get it, and no one is going to stop me except maybe my teammate. the first half, Cal Filipowski had 10 rebounds. Dereck Lively had 6 rebounds, and it felt like every single ball that was in the air around the rim, one of them was coming down with it. And it even seemed like halfway up, they both would be jumping with each other, and they can kind of look at each other like, "Nah, you get it." And they were off and running. I think it was a dominant display on the glass for them, both on the offensive glass and the defensive glass.
You know what I loved about it, by the way, was the number of rebounds that Dereck Lively got, where where like everybody jumped and the ball would sort of be tipped around and stuff, and then Dereck Lively was the guy who'd come down with it because his arms are just longer than everybody else.
There was one where
balls that, like, it's supposed to be a 50-50 ball, but it's not, because Dereck Lively's arms are so much longer.
There was one where he jumped up, and even he didn't think he was going to come down with it, because he was like basically halfway down. Like, he had already jumped all the way up to his apex and was halfway down, and all of a sudden his arm just kind of go gadgeted out there and grabbed the ball, and all of a sudden he kind of goes, "Oh!" And that was the play, Jason, where I'm pretty sure it went to Tyrese Proctor, who then threw the home run pass that was kind of tipped but caught by Dereck Whitehead, who then laid it in. That was one where it started with a Dereck Lively just going, "Oh, I'm tall, I can just go get the ball. Wait, even if I'm coming down, I'm still going to get the ball." That's like the confidence that they both displayed on the glass was just incredible, and the two of them together made it for a dominant performance on the glass, and it led to a lot of second chance points for Duke. Kevin Keats in the post-game presser mentioned that Duke had a lot of second chance points, and that was really what took them out of a lot of their flow. It started with the rebounding, both on offense and on defense.
Lively also created one jump ball opportunity where I can't remember which NC State player it was, but the NC State guy was basically coming down with the rebound, and Lively just put his arms over in the right position and was like, "Nope, I am also here. We are holding this ball together. This is not yours." So I like that. The other thing that I note about the big men here, I don't want to call it a bad that Ryan Young only gets to play 11 minutes in this game, because if we go back to the beginning of the season, we talked about how.
By the way, Sam, he had 6 rebounds in those 11 minutes.
Yes. So you're beating me to the point here, which is that before the season we said likely the best version of Duke is that Dereck Lively is playing 25 minutes a game and Ryan Young is playing 15. It feels like we're getting to that point where Ryan Young is still very productive. He still has post moves that befuddle most ACC big men. He is still able to pull down rebounds against second teamers. He can't really, there's not much he can do against DJ Burns or against other big men who have particularly good footwork, because Ryan Young just isn't athletic enough to hang with guys like that. But as you said, Jason, in those limited minutes, in 11 minutes, he pulls down 6 rebounds. He does manage to get a couple buckets. He had one of the niftiest buckets of the night. I think he had one post move where I was like, "Ooh, Ryan Young did that thing." So I like where Duke is now with their big man rotation, because this is basically what we expected. Plus Kyle Filipowski being such an elite scorer, even on a night when he is somewhat befuddled, he still manages to score 11 points.
Look, I want to talk for a second about how physical this game was. And I think this is where we talk about the maturity, the growing up process that this team has endured over the last, the season. There was one play, and spoiler alert, it's my favorite play of the game. It was when Dereck Whitehead and Terquavion Smith kind of got into a little tussle going for a loose ball. They both were on the ground flying for the loose ball. They both grab it. And at a certain point, Dereck Whitehead was based, and I talked to him afterwards. He said, "Yeah, I just let him know that nobody was coming up the ball with me. And if I wasn't going to get the ball, then no one was getting the ball." He came up with the ball and walked off with the ball to a TV timeout. He walked off like he had secured a fumble on the football field. He threw the ball in the air behind. Dereck Lively's right next to him with his hand around his shoulders. And it felt like to that point, the team all gathered around and responded. There was another point where it got really physical. There was a play inside where a bunch of guys were going for a loose ball. It ended up where Tyrese Proctor ends up on the ground and the ball's going the other way. But Duke didn't mope. They went down. They were physical themselves. They got a rebound. They made a basket on the other end. And that was the point when John Shire motioned for Cameron to get on their feet and get loud and get crazy. And damn it, they did. They were really loud at all points of the night, but that point was probably the loudest point of the night. It was so loud that NC State responded by immediately calling a timeout because they said, we do not want no smoke with this atmosphere at this point in the game. They knew at that point that that was going to be a game-changing moment, and it was, because I think every single moment, loose balls, rebounds, defense, Duke was right in NC State's face. And I think that's what shocked NC State initially. That's what shocked Terquavion Smith. Even DJ Burns, the looks that he was getting, they were of a physical nature. Guys, he was trying to back people down in the paint, and Dereck Lively and Ryan Young and even Kyle Filipowski, they were going right at him too. And I think it reminded me of like old ACC basketball. This was like an old ACC basketball game where both teams are just going at it, not in a bad way, in a physical nature. It was a lot of fun to watch in that regard. And it shows me that this team right here, 2 months ago when we played them in Raleigh, they didn't have this energy. They didn't have this physicality or intensity. They had it tonight. And you can see how much of a difference it made in the game.
Down the stretch, Jason, Duke was able to make almost all of its free throws in the final 2 minutes. And you pointed out when we started talking here that this was a game where Duke made it unnecessarily close, where it felt like they might have had the ability to pull away. Talk to me about the maturity that this team has displayed, the growth from that game in Raleigh almost 2 months ago until now, where at the end of the game, whether it's Jeremy Roach or Tyrese Proctor, they are just calmly hitting free throws to ice this one.
Yeah, for a game that felt like it was salted away, if Duke had struggled at the free throw line in the second half, things could have gotten very nervous. Instead, after a shaky first half where Duke only hit 12 out of 17 free throws, they went 11 of 12 from the free throw line in the second half. And, in the final couple minutes, final 4 minutes, really, it was almost all free throws. That's the only way Duke was scoring for the most part. Part of that was that NC State was fouling us, but part of that was these guys, finding a way. They had to get points somehow. And the way they were getting points was at the free throw line. It ain't easy when you're up 4 points shooting the front end of a 1-and-1 to knock 2 free throws down, especially when you know that NC State's probably going to race the other direction and bury a circus 3-pointer, which they did again and again and again in this game. So I just wanted to tip my cap. Mark Mitchell, Jeremy Roach, and Tyrese Proctor, all three of those guys had really, really big free throws that they hit late in this game. And that ain't as easy to do as people may think it is. And the other thing I wanted to mention about Mark Mitchell very quickly was he tied for second in scoring in the game with 12 points and 5 rebounds. And I thought Mark Mitchell was outstanding on defense in this game. He's the classic look. People have started to begin a little bit to compare him to Justice Winslow, the Swiss Army knife kind of player. He's not. Let's be clear. He is not there yet. He is not as strong as Winslow was. His outside shot isn't as good as Justice. There are a lot of things he doesn't do as well, but poor man's Justice Winslow is what we're starting to see from Mark Williams. And part of that is playing unbelievable defense. He was, for the most part, guarding Casey Morsell in this game. Casey Morsell played 38 and a half minutes and was 0 for 8 from the field. That's not a good game. That is really not a good game. And a lot of that was Mark Mitchell playing good defense on him. And when he wasn't on Casey Morsell, it was probably because Mark Mitchell was helping out or switching onto a more difficult assignment. I just thought he was, every time I stopped for a moment and really tried to watch him and watch the Duke defense, he was doing the right thing. That was not the case earlier this year. He has really matured. And the past few weeks, Mark Mitchell is playing like, a player that could be a key piece of Duke making a deep run in March.
Jason, if Mark Mitchell is playing anywhere like Justice Winslow played in the 2015 NCAA tournament, which he still has time to get to, then we're going to be in great shape, because that was a great Justice Winslow that we saw in the 2015 NCAA tournament. But I think the one thing about, to be fair to Duke in the last couple of minutes, the reason why it seemed a little shaky, it wasn't bad defense. We had guys that had 2-3 people going after some of these 3-point shots that they were making from 20, it felt like 25, 30 feet. Every single shot, it felt like, even when, Joyner was making a bunch of them, a lot of them were with hands in the face. So it wasn't after the game, John Shire did not lament the fact that we let them back into the game. He said it was more of NC State making some really, really tough shots. And the thing about Duke's defense is that they, even when NC State made shots, they weren't open. Very, very few of them were uncontested. They were all with a hand in the face, and they all were just making plays. And I think that's what it's about. If you're playing defense and a team makes play, then okay, tip of the hat to them. But most of the night, Duke had their number.
Guys, let's take a quick break. When we get back, we need to get into the bad from this one, because once again, somewhat of an uneven offensive performance for Duke. So stick around. We are back, and we are talking about the bad from Duke's win against NC State. Jason, on a night when Duke scores 71 points, a team that does not play at a fast pace, I see that Duke is basically only 10% from three-point land, 2 for 19. And it wasn't just, we mentioned Jeremy Roach in the first half about how, he was scoring a ton around the rim, but couldn't buy a bucket from outside. He was not the only one. Roach goes 0 for 5 from 3. Mark Mitchell's 1 for 3. Filipowski's 0 for 3. Tyrese Proctor is 0 for 3. Dereck Lively threw one up. He didn't make his. It was a tough night for 3 for the Duke guys. Even Jacob Grandison, who is supposed to be, the heat guy off the bench, goes 0 for 3 from 3. Was it that Duke wasn't getting the right shots, or were they just not falling tonight in Cameron?
No, they just were not falling. I don't think there was a single one that anyone took where I was like, no. I mean, even Dereck Lively's. I
was wide open.
I actually thought Dereck Lively could have taken 3-pointers earlier in the game. The degree to which DJ Burns was leaving him open at the 3-point line. When Lively finally did take one, I mean, he didn't even come close to hitting the rim. It was a really, really bad shot. But yeah, no, Duke didn't take any bad 3-pointers. We just didn't knock any of them down. That's concerning. That's a problem. I mean, this team's got to find a way to get that, because they're going to get that shot, because teams are so worried about Duke's overwhelming size and our ability to get into the lane. Look, the smallest guy on the team is Jeremy Roach, and he probably gets in the lane as good as anyone on this club. So teams are going to pack it in against Duke, and we've got to be able to hit some of those 3-pointers. That was definitely troubling. The other thing that bothered me, by the way, our 3-point stats are off. It says 2 for 19. It really should say 2 for 21, because in the first couple minutes of the game, both Tyrese Proctor and Jeremy Roach took shots with their foot on the 3-point line. So it counted as a 2. Really bad awareness on their part. We talked about how great those guys played. They were fabulous, but really bad court awareness to take those shots that were essentially 3-pointers, but they were only 2-pointers. They missed them anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. But you kind of have to be aware of, where you are on the floor. And I just thought our offense, it really felt like we struggled to get good shots, especially early in the game. I thought in the first half, Duke was pretty sloppy on the shot selection. Our passing wasn't that great. There were some really nasty turnovers in this game. We didn't have a ton of turnovers, but the ones we had, some of them were just like, ugh, really? Like Dereck Whitehead at one point just threw the ball out of bounds to nobody. I think, Kyle Filipowski was sitting at the scores table ready to check in. I think he threw it to Kyle Filipowski.
Well, and then wasn't that one on the break where
it was on a break? Yeah.
I think he was looking for Jacob Grandison, and Grandison was like going to the corner, not going to the elbow.
Oh, it was just it was a terrible. And then we had another one where Mark Mitchell had run out ahead, and he just fumbled he had a wide open dunk and just fumbled the ball off his fingers. So there was some pretty sloppy play by Duke. In the first half, we only shot 38% from the field. Kyle Filipowski, we mentioned it. Kyle couldn't even hit a layup at times in this game. And he probably took, 8 or 9 shots inside of 5 feet, and he maybe made 1 or 2 of them. It was not, it wasn't a great offensive performance by the Blue Devils. But you know what? We won by 4. I'll take it.
So there was a couple of moments where a couple of times one in the first half and one in the second half where we went on long scoring droughts. We made the very first basket of the game, and then we missed our next 9 shots. 9 shots. We usually go 3 or 4 or something like that, but missing 9 is a lot. And Jason, like you mentioned, a lot of those early were layups that were missing. We were getting the offensive rebound, trying to put it back up, missing those again. It felt like a comedy of errors in the second half.
Hey, Donald, it felt like it felt a little bit like the game we had in Raleigh against. Remember, we missed our first 12 shots against them in Raleigh. I was terrified in the first 5 minutes that we were going to have the same kind of game we had in Raleigh.
Kevin Keats mentioned that exact same thing. He said the pace of the game and everything about it felt like the game 2 months ago in Raleigh. It's just that NC State was not making shots either in that stretch. So it was kind of interesting that you mentioned that, because Kevin Keats pointed that out as well. In the second half, from the 8:39 mark to the 3:19 mark, we didn't score a field goal. We missed 5 3-pointers in a row. It was a Jeremy Roach jumper with 3:19 left that broke that kind of drought that we had. And I think the one thing, JC, you also mentioned that I think contributed to a lot of these was the fact that we weren't moving the ball around very well. We only had 6 assists, which is very, very low. We're usually, up in the, 15, 16 assist range, no matter how many shots we make. We usually are passing the ball around quite well. But this time around, it felt like there was a lot of guys trying to create off the dribble. And even if they were trying to find passes, it was, they were putting guys in position where they still had to kind of dribble to create a shot at the rim. And it wasn't a lot of, guys. And I think the open shots probably contribute to a lot of those missed opportunities for assists.
I feel like some of that, though, is credit to NC State for playing such good defense against Duke
Absolutely
all night, right? This was down low and on the perimeter, where I think Duke's offensive execution has generally gotten better over the last month or so. And NC State was able to exploit a lot of the places where Duke had been susceptible earlier. I hope that's not a sign that Duke's offense is going to regress, because other teams are going to see the tape from tonight and figure out how to guard the Blue Devils away from making the good passes. It also felt like, because there were so few threes being made, like good passes were going back out to the perimeter, like from Jeremy Roach or from other guys who were driving Tyrese Proctor. It's just that the guys at the outside, if they're not hitting their shots, you don't get an assist for a good pass that doesn't lead to a made basket.
Guys, I want to call myself out about something. So I have a text chain with a bunch of my Duke friends, and we're always firing messages back and forth to each other during the game. And at halftime, I sent a text to my friends, and you guys, of course, are familiar with Arrested Development and how sometimes someone would say something and then Ron Howard, the narrator, would chime in and explain how that person, what they just said, was wrong. So this was me at halftime. I sent this text to my friends. I said, there is no way Jarkel Joyner is going to keep on hitting all these long range contested shots with us all over him in the second half. Cue the narrator. He did. And I also said, there's also no way that Terquavion Smith is going to remain scoreless and not get a bucket in the second half. Narrator, he did. So I just wanted to note that I reached out to my peeps and made 2 bold statements at halftime, both of which were absolutely, completely wrong. And I do think, Sam, you mentioned a second ago, credit where credit's due to NC State. Jarkel Joyner, absolutely incredible game on his part. I don't want to call it a Bootsy game, because he's too good a player for you to label him as a Bootsy Thornton. This guy's probably going to make like second team all ACC or something like that. And the shots he was hitting were unlike, I don't think I've ever seen anyone hit that many difficult shots against Duke. So a hat tip to Mr. Joyner.
Guys, before we wrap up here, I just want to get final thoughts on Jon Scheyer going 16-0 at home, undefeated in his first season in Cameron. Donald, I know you got to attend the press conferences after the game. What did Jon Scheyer have to say about that accomplishment for himself and for the team?
Well, he was very proud. I mean, the fact that he someone asked him what his most difficult moment of the season was, and he was like, hey, first of all, I can only pick one. And he kind of joked about that, but he mentioned that it was about the fact that he was doing this new thing with new guys. And like the only guys really that were in kind of a rotation from last year was Jeremy Roach and Jalen Blake. So those are the only 2 real scholarship players that he kind of was able to lean on and kind of take from last season and say, hey, I need you to help me this year, kind of lead this team. But a funny note that he made about this game, he talked about when he attended his first game in Cameron. He said, from that moment on, I fell in love with Duke, and I wanted to, always protect this house and make this my home. And this is our place. And he credited the fans. He credited, the Cameron Crazies for being the best, home court advantage in college basketball all year long. Note, guys, I believe we're the only team in Division I where between the men and the women, we only had one loss, and that was by the women just a couple of days ago. So, hats off to the Cameron Crazies and everybody who showed up at Cameron for all the basketball games this year. But, guys, the notable point about John Shire's comments was that the first game that John Shire attended was the Patrick Davidson game against Wake Forest in 2005.
I love it.
If that's not going to make you fall in love with Duke, I don't know what will. So let Patrick Davidson, thank you for making John Shire fall in love with Duke, because here we are. It's perfect.
It's obviously a great accomplishment to go undefeated. Let's be clear, though. Duke, undefeated at home, I should say. Duke is done with home games, and no one has ever won a national championship or an ACC title on their home floor. Maybe historically that's happened once. I don't know. But it hasn't happened in my lifetime. And this Duke team will need to perform really, really well away from Cameron. But this is a great accomplishment. It's good for John Shire to have something like this to hang his hat on, something that Coach K did not do in his first season. That's for damn well sure. And the last thing I wanted to mention, and guys, we have not mentioned the letters U and C on this broadcast, and
Who?
I'm glad. Good. I'm glad we haven't. We will be talking about them extensively starting tomorrow. But without mentioning them, I do want to point something out. Gentlemen, do you know how many games in a row you have to win an NCAA title?
6.
I heard it's 6.
Yeah, the answer is 6. Do you know how many 6-game win streaks Duke has this year?
0.
The answer is 0. Exactly. Duke is currently sitting on a 5-game win streak. If you're going to win a title, if you're going to bring it home, you got to win 6 in a row. Only way to prove you can win 6 in a row is to win 6 in a row.
I say that sounds great. Let's go 1-0 on Saturday. We'll talk about them later, but let's go 1-0 on Saturday, and then we can talk about what other streaks may come with that.
I love that sentiment. Guys, let's take our plays of the game. We're not picking players of the week yet because the week is not over yet, but we do have to pick a play of the game. So, Donald, I know you already teased this for us, but give me your play of the game one more time.
It was Dereck Whitehead getting that loose ball, getting the jump ball, and then coming out of the pile with the ball and walking off the court like a team on the football field, grabbing a fumble and running, saying, "Hey, offense, this is your football now. You guys can go play." It was one of those things where at that moment, a freshman said, "No, I'm not going to play like a freshman this moment. I'm going to be physical. I'm going to make sure that this other team understands that this is not their ball. This is not their house. And I'm going to play like it." And I think even with Dereck Whitehead, who went perfect on the day, 2 for 2 is not necessarily, the best offensive output from him, but he went perfect from the shots that he took. But the physicality that was there, and he established the tone, he kept the tone, and that moment got Cameron on his feet, and everybody said, "Okay, we're going to win this game."
All right, you're going to be very surprised. I was all set to talk about one of the many dives to the basket by Jeremy Roach as my play of the game. And then I changed my mind, and it's going to just seem like the weirdest thing ever that I'm saying that this is my play of the game. But with a little more than 4 minutes left and Duke leading by 6 points. And look, it's easy to remember, Duke got up by 12 and then NC State came back in the final minute. We were only leading by 6 with a little more than 4 minutes left. And here's my play of the game. Mark Mitchell grabbed an offensive rebound, and Mark Mitchell got fouled and knocked down those 2 free throws. Not exciting, not Dereck Lively's ridiculous dunks, not Jeremy Roach's incredible, dives to the basket, not Tyrese Proctor locking down Terquavion Smith. Mark Mitchell grabbed an offensive rebound, got fouled, and knocked down 2 free throws. I can't even tell you how big those free throws were. I felt in my bones at that moment. We had that possession. We hadn't scored in like 3 or 4 minutes. We just weren't doing anything on offense. I was like, my God, we're dead. We've got to get something on this possession. And Mark Mitchell got an offensive rebound and knocked down 2 free throws. You will probably never see me say 2 free throws are the play of the game. But in my opinion, Duke would have lost this game if we hadn't scored on that possession. So Mark Mitchell, thank you.
I kind of like Tyrese Proctor being a gamer, drawing the technical foul and then knocking down his own 2 free throws with the guys not standing there. I appreciated that. The other one that I liked was late in the first half. Jeremy Roach had a super clever alley-oop toss to Dereck Lively at a moment when it felt like Duke had a lot of momentum. Obviously, things turned around there later in the game, but the moment when I felt the most positive about this team was Roach to Proctor on the alley-oop late in the first half.
Does Dereck Lively ever score anything but exciting baskets?
Also,
we've talked about this, but it's just like he had 3 buckets in this game. I remember every one of them crystal clear.
That was also another go gadget Lively kind of play. Like, I mean, he jumped over DJ Burns, and DJ Burns kind of stuck his wide body out, and Dereck Lively was like, "No, that's cool. I'm just going to jump over you and dunk the ball." So, yeah, I love that one.
Pretty cool. All right, guys, we're gonna get out of here. As we mentioned, Duke's got one more regular season game. It's a big one, Saturday night in Chapel Hill. So we will be back to preview that. Stay in touch with us, DBR Podcast at gmail.com. We love hearing from you. We are very close to March. Tomorrow, by the time you listen to this, it'll be March, because I don't know that Donald's going to get this thing edited in the next 45 minutes, and you certainly won't listen to it in the next 45 minutes. So happy March. We're
right.
back.
No matter what, by the time they hear your voice, it'll be March.
It'll be March. So
wait, actually, we have listeners. I was thinking we have listeners in Japan and stuff, but no, they already got March. It's already March in Japan.
It would be people like in Hawaii, but that would imply that the people in Hawaii are like waiting to get this show and listen to it before we get to that point, or even West Coast folks.
Do you think that's not the case? Do you think that doesn't happen?
If you listen to this show in February, email us dbrpodcast@gmail.com and tell us how quickly you digested this thing, because we need
timestamps. We need timestamps. So if you send your email,
screenshots, whatever, prove it that you listened to this show in February, because we need receipts.
We're so ridiculous.
For everyone else, happy March. Duke, it seems like, is going back to the NCAA tournament with the new head coach for the first time in many years. I think the last time Duke went to the NCAA tournament, not with Mike Krzyzewski, they made the Final Four. Is that right? In 1978?
They made the title game.
They made the title game? Is that the last time Duke went to the tournament without Coach K?
That's Forever's team, yeah. John Feinstein wrote a book about him.
I don't think they made the tournament in 79. Because this is still back in, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. We'll talk to you again soon. We'll preview the Carolina game. So for Jason Evans, for Donald Wine, I'm Sam Klein. This has been episode 494 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. Duke Band, take us home.
Oh, guys, they definitely made the tournament in 1979.
Great.
They made.
But never mind.
Oh, that was Black Friday. That was when Duke and UNC were both they were both really highly ranked, and they both lost at the same time. Duke was like a top 10 team that whole season.
Oops.
Yeah.
Like Gene Banks and Jim Spanarkel was still on the team.
And the dog.
Yeah. Well, Vince Taylor, Gene Banks, Jim Spanarkel, Kenny Denard, Mike Jaminski. That was a hell of a team.
Damn.
We're
can't
such
believe we
idiots.
didn't win a title with that crew.
Yeah, how did that happen?
Pretty angry about it. I'm still angry about it.
I was there, man. I was there.
We also made the tournament in 1980.
Oh.
Damn it, Jason.
And then
I was so young. Wait. I know you guys weren't alive. I was so young. And remember, my family's all Carolina fans.
So did Bill Foster just retire?
No, he left. He went to where was it? He went to South Carolina.
Bill Foster left Duke for South Carolina, and then Duke hired Mike Krzyzewski.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Dang. Can you imagine a Duke men's basketball coach leaving for South Carolina today?
It seems insane.
I guess if Duke is playing in the Big East and South Carolina is playing in the SEC in 10 years, and Duke's making The athletic department's still only making whatever, like $30 million a year from their TV deal. And South Carolina's making $100 million. I guess that could happen again. But something tells me John Shire's not leaving for South Carolina.
No.
Probably not.